Comic Book Talk 360 continues on with their review of Superman Secret Identity with Chapter 2, which is entitled Metropolis. And Metropolis here, to no one's surprise, is New York. And because we're in a more realistic universe, New York is pretty much the setting for this chapter, as well as the New Yorker, the magazine, instead of the Daily Planet, is where this Clark Kent works. And he has been working there for some time. So far, things are good. He's actually getting on well, and he's actually thinking about becoming a writer outside of the New Yorker. Things are working fine. He has met with his chief editor, which is not Perry White, is Myrtle Mark, who told him that he needs to lighten up. His stories is pretty much direct, but there's no humor, and it felt a little bit deadpan. This prompts him to start going out more. And we meet Lois Lane, which is not really Lois Lane, but she does have the name Lois. And at first, because of the jokes that's going on between him and Clark, they don't hit it off very well. But as they got to know each other, things start to gel out. They start to get a relationship, and he is very happy. There's also the factor is that he is Superman here. He's wearing the cape. He's flying around saving people. The only difference is he's doing it in a way that no one can identify him. He doesn't want to be in the papers. He doesn't want the media to know he exists. So this Superman becomes more of a pretty much urban legend. They have a feeling they were saved by Superman, but they just don't know. And this has pretty much been like that for most of the chapters, with the exception of the last few pages of the last chapter. And there's a reason for that, and I will get to that in the next review. But needless to say that this Superman is pretty much a cloak and dagger. And he's so far doing fine. He's doing great. Until the government started closing in on him. And when he started to do his sightings, the government realized what he's doing. The first thing he's doing is that he's actually has a pattern that the government is trying to pinpoint against him. And that pattern is that he seems to use the waterways as a way to not be detected. He's also using other methods, also hearing and make sure he's being crystal clear of what he's hearing is actually genuine. And he does this more, especially after the events of this chapter. Needless to say that he is trying to watch his steps, but at the same time the government is trying to pinpoint how to best capture him. But he's enjoying it. He's actually enjoying it. In this chapter, I'm going to show you something here is very important. A very important piece of the chapter here, besides the fact that he has met with Lois Lane. This is how he is represented in the Superman series, and I want to bring this up here as soon as I can find it, which is becoming almost impossible because I'm turning the pages so quickly, but it's important. This here is a very important scene here because this is what got the government into his radar. This is the scene that's right off the Superman movies. Most movies I've noticed with Superman always have him making his grand entrance where he's saving someone from a copter or he's saving someone from the plane. There is something that involves flight that he makes his grand entrance. I think the only time when he didn't do that is when the Man of Steel, where he just revealed himself to the army. But in the most old schools, it's always something to do with flight. Even with Lois and Clark, the New Adventures, Superman is dealing with flight. When this comes to Smallville, it's dealing with flight. When it came to Christopher Reeve Superman, it's dealing with flight. Even the George Reed Superman is dealing with flight. That's how he premieres himself, with something dealing with flight. And this one had its consequences because the government realized, hey, it's our man. We found footprints here. Can we trace him? And of course, they didn't really trace it back, but that solidifies that the man they were looking for all these years is still doing his stuff. This, however, is taking a back seat for the time being, but it's in our minds. And again, we are now approached to the Lois Lane of the bunch. And this is very important because this Lois Lane, I think, is one of the best written Lois Lanes I've ever read in this comic book. And I will say that she has a spunk to her. She's not a damsel in distress. She is very, very well done, well to do. And I really like how they've written her as not someone you want to play in. Her name is Lois Chandler. That's one thing. Not Lois Lane, but she has the hallmarks of what Lois Lane is, minus I need to be saved every time I put myself into trouble. In fact, none of that happens in this book. Again, if you're a purist and you felt that Lois Lane need to be saved every time, you're not going to like this Lois Lane. But if you really like a Lois Lane who's independent, sticks for herself, not being saved, but more of a strong supportive character, while at the same time not going to take no mess, this is the character. This is the Lois Lane you're actually going to like. And the first one they met, because a friend met them at a restaurant. She was being made fun of. Clark was being made fun of, but Clark actually pursued her, apologized, and they started dating. And their dating led to them having a more stronger relationship. In this chapter, just to let you know right now, when chapter 2 hits, the dialogue becomes more mature. It's not a goofy dialogue at all. The conversations they have, you actually believe they will actually have in real life. That's the thing I actually like the best about this book, because this book, in the teenage years, you get the feeling of what the teenager may say, what they're going through. They're sometimes goofy, sometimes not. But once that Superboy Smallville's type style is shown up in there, we now immediately go to a more mature, more educated, more convincing dialogue throughout the rest of the chapters, and they really do a good job in that. In fact, this book really much is geared not much for the children, young readers, but more for the young adults, diehards, Superman fans, open Superman fans who are looking to hear a different take, a different story towards a character who just bears Superman's powers. And throughout this chapter, you see the relationship, you see how happy he is until he made one mistake. And this one mistake pretty much let him know that, hey, he is not safe. His life is in danger, as well as those who if they find out who he really is, will come after him. In the beginning of this book, you don't see Clark wear the glasses, and this is the reason why, because he didn't feel there was need to. Keep in mind, the glasses is a persona that this is supposed to be a disguise to not tell the difference between him and Superman. And I think that even though I can never get the fact that you can't distinguish the two, I think with the Christopher Reeve one, it made better sense, because Christopher Reeve never once acted like he was Superman. He was acting like a clumsy, goofy, but a very nice, charming guy, and that's what makes his portrayal of Superman so memorable, because he actually played off two different parts in that movie, and he actually played it well. You was not convinced that guy who was stumbling, who was having a hard time expressing himself, could ever be that strong man of steel, saving people, and have so much confidence that he can talk to Lois and make Lois blush. That's why Christopher Lee is so memorable as the role, and nothing against the other people who have played it. To me personally, I don't think there was not a single one who actually played it bad. I believe that even the person who everybody wants to get on with the Superman turn, I didn't think he was bad. I just think he was miscast. He would have played a better younger Superman if he was younger, if they actually rebooted the series. But to me, I didn't think he was terrible. But there was a difference distinguished. Some people can actually pull off dual personas well, some people not. In this one, he didn't need to do it. In The Secret Identity, he didn't think it was necessary to do it until a very dark turn happened. And what happened was, he saw a boat capsize, he thought there was some trouble, he went to save it, and then all of a sudden, the missiles came out. They bombed him. And this is where you're reminded that this is not the Superman that we are grown used to seeing, because many times Superman would have probably shrugged that off. He probably would have been stunned, but not to the point where he has been completely knocked out, incapacitated. After they knocked him out, they basically stripped him of the Superman uniform and basically put him in his tube, and they're doing testing, they're checking his heart rate, everything, and he's actually conscious. He's not really knocked out. Something I forgot to mention in the first chapter is you start to see references every now and then of Superman's strength, what he's really all about, from the Golden Age, which is really focused a lot on the Golden Age. You see Superman's battle with Brainiac, and how Brainiac's using the red sun to drain Superman's powers. You see Lex Luger and Kryptonite being his greatest weakness. This one, because I'm gonna let you know right now, Kryptonite's not a factor in this one, nor is the red sun, but his arrogance a little bit, as well as him not being aware of his surroundings, became his weakness, and it played it off well because he put himself in a very bad situation, and it is now up to his pure willpower. They drugged this guy. Keep in mind, he's a man of steel, but he can still get injected with needles. Superman cannot. That's something that has always been plagued. That even if he got a bit, he had needed get surgery, they can't cut him open because his skin won't allow it. In this one, they're drugging him. They're trying to sedate him, and he's pretty much pure willpower fighting it to the point where when he woke up, he started blasting the whole entire lab. Things didn't get any better when he started seeing bodies, dead bodies of men, probably women, and small feet of infant children, and that's when he really lost it, and that's when you saw the full brunt of his powers, which is amazing and scary at the same time. He didn't let anyone die in the factory. He dragged them over. He literally laid them down. But that whole entire factory was destroyed, and he went home, and he just basically went in a state of depression. He was sad. He was upset. He knew they were after him. They knew they won't not stop coming after them. And that's when he started to wear the glasses. That's when he started to put on the Masana. Did it work? I don't think it did, but you understand from his point of view why he wore the glasses, because now he realized, hey, someone's on to me. They're tracking me, and it's only a matter of time where they're going to try again. This led to a lot of things. It led to him being isolated. He didn't talk to anyone. He didn't talk to Lois. Lois wanted to know what's going on, and he just basically struck her off. He didn't talk to her for days. He thinking he don't have a relationship anymore. He basically is not going to work, and all this stuff is basically building in, and you can see from him that it's wearing in on him. He's worn out. He's not talking. He's basically putting himself in a shell. Eventually, he came out of it. He still wanted to save people. He couldn't hide the fact that he had this power, and he wants to do something with the power. This is his choice. He wants to do something with his powers. And when he started doing that, that's when his depression started seizing up. But he couldn't just handle it alone. He needed that companionship, someone to actually turn to trust and talk about his problems. And so long and behold, he went to Lois Lane. Lois Chandler. They talked. They went to the roof and they spoke, and he asked a very awkward question. It was a very good dialogue. He said, "Take off the shirt," and he said, "Wait, what are you doing? We're in broad daylight," because they're still in lineup. And he said, "Just take off my shirt." After he grabbed her and held her in arms, he took off the shirt. And she said, "All right, well, if you think you're gonna get under my pants, you're wrong." But when she saw the S, at first she thought she was joking, and then he realized she was not on the ground. She was way up in the air, and that's when she realized that the gift that he has. Now they're speaking, and then he's letting her know, I don't know where this power came from. I don't know how I got it, but I got it, and I know that somebody is out there, out to get me. He's explained that I'm trusting you with this power, and she basically told him that she also has a secret herself, pretty much a juvie secret. It's not even nowhere near. Nowhere near his issue, but she's saying that she's also afraid if anybody finds out what it can do to her career. Basically, they both laugh it off, saying, well, I guess we're both criminals. They both shrug it off, but this more never strengthened their relationship. This more never brought them closer together, where eventually the next chapter, needed to say, I'm not going to say anything about it, but it is something that I'm going to say this right now. The person who wrote this story pretty much proved, without a shadow of doubt, that you can write a family superhero if you do it right. This myth that the comic book industry has, that you can't write married couples and be superheroes at the same time, I just think that's their excuse. They don't want to try. They don't want to make the effort. They just want to take the lazy way out. This story did it perfectly, and with the relationship with these two characters, which you can actually you was actually convinced they do have a relationship, they do it well here, and this is why when I hear people say that they can't, that they don't want to give, like say like Peter Parker, a real relationship where it can last long because they feel it makes them old. It's another word they're saying they don't want to put the effort and they're just too lazy to write relationship characters in the superhero comics. That's just my opinion. The story pretty much ended the same way. They got together, they got married, and pretty much everything that happened in this event really slowly falls into the third issue of Superman Secret Identity. I liked this issue for a lot of reasons because it, first of all, the maturity dialogue jumped 100% fold, and I think that the situation between him, the military, which is by the way his enemies at the moment, and how they introduced each other to his love interest really did fall into it. I also like the dialogue with his boss because the boss is saying, "Hey, you got talent, but you're too uptight. You're not, you're really not getting out more. You need to actually spread out more if you're going to have people read your stuff." Because he wants to bring his own philosophies on life, his own philosophies on how he sees things. And even though it's a good read, it felt like a person reading from someone who is basically not alive, and that is something that's of importance. Also, I like the fact that they continue on with the typewriter style thoughts of what he's going through, what he's going through, what he sees himself as, and I think that is a very strong strength because the dialogue here and throughout the rest of the book is really not that many. I mean, you're really getting the story being told through this character, what he's going through, what's going on, what's it's like, and that's very important to have, especially with this character. And I really did like the fact they did that. If I got any problems, and this has been a problem with me with this particular chapter, and even some parts of another chapter, it's not with the bubbles, it's the artwork. Let me tell you something. This artwork, for the most part, is brilliant. When they do the landscape, when you see them flying, when they got the picture of the city, it is gorgeous. I really do like how they actually painted the environment, as well as this working the city. I really do like it. It's the facial characters I have a bit of a problem from. It's the body features. There are some times I don't know, like for Lois, I didn't know if she was Caucasian or African American or Indian. I really didn't. Sometimes you can pretty much distinguish, and sometimes I couldn't. That's the same with facial expressions. Sometimes the facial expression is fine, sometimes it seems a little bit disjointed, and that's pretty much a point taker for me because I don't. Artwork to me in comic books is very important, and sometimes I'm not saying they have to be consistent every single time, but when it comes to the point where it becomes a distraction, it really does become a problem, and that's something that pretty much is feedback for anybody. I think the worst that have done it was, I think, one of the X-Men issues where Wolverine, for a man who was supposed to be vicious, he looked too jolly in a fight scene. I'm just saying it was one of the weirdest art style there was, and I wasn't the only one. I think Lankara had mentioned that in his book. But that's the only grief I had with that, is that some of the facial and body features seem a little bit odd. They were just very odd. Other times it looks fine, and I guess it's because of the skin tone they was giving, not just Lois but other characters as well. It struck me as kind of weird. That's basically it. But I'll draw back on that when I do the conclusion of the review. So far so good. 2 down, 2 more to go. Until then, J77, take care. Talk to you soon.